Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the AdvoSci Health Podcast, where we explore healthcare beyond the headlines and we amplify voices that are shaping the system. Today's episode is a really special one and one that I've been waiting for a long time. I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, Dr. Teresa Chan, the founding dean of the TMU School of Medicine. Dr. Chan is an emergency physician, an educator, and a leader in medical education innovation. Her work has focused on reimagining how we train physicians, with an emphasis on equity, community partnership, and preparing doctors for the realities of modern healthcare. As dean, she's been instrumental in building TMU medicine from the ground up. And as a student in her inaugural class, it's a privilege to be able to learn from and speak with her today. Dr. Chan, thank you so much for joining us, especially during the winter break.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Omar. This is a privilege to be here with you.
Yeah, wonderful. And just for our viewers who are watching and listening, we're just letting you know we've just wrapped up our first semester at the school, which feels kind of crazy to say out loud. It's been very exciting and a little bit surreal, especially knowing we're the first class to ever experience the curriculum. So I thought we'd maybe start there actually. Since TMU Medicine has welcomed its first cohort a few months ago, and now that students have experienced the curriculum, the culture, and the pace of the school. What has stood out to you the most about this inaugural class so far, Dr. Chan?
Yeah, I mean, the first inaugural class you are a bunch of lovely, amazing humans who have lived up to many of my expectations and surpassed them in many ways. I have had such a privilege of meeting all these 94 young people who are just amazingly gifted in all their different ways that they showcased in their applications. And then when you get here, you realize they were probably being too humble in their applications. They're leaders, they're scholars, they're um, just people who want to make change in the world, and that's been amazing to watch come to life. Omar, what's the record now for the number of clubs and activities that your group has started? I think it's in the
It's
60s or 70s,
yeah, it's
different
in the
interest
50s or
groups.
60s.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you started your student
Council?
society, like
Yeah,
your student council, right?
yeah, yeah.
In record breaking time. I think you started it faster than the law students did when TMU started their law program a couple of years ago. And you're heading on to do more stuff. So this is amazing. And I'm so proud of all of the students and what they've been able to contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the kind words on behalf of the class as well. I think a lot of us feel that sense of like, co-creation that we were talking about early on. It's become very evident and very real, especially when you're not only sifting through the curriculum, but you're also experiencing it for the first time alongside the ones who are teaching it. So it's not just like learning medicine, but it's actually helping shape how this school becomes for the future. And that's been, very, very cool to experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think any really good curriculum should be somewhat co-created, right?
Yeah.
You look at some of the more recent iterations of different curricula, and they are all moving towards the same kind of setup that you have, which is case-based, very co-created, that you bring as much into the conversation
Hmm.
as you take it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I guess another question that I have for you with respect to that is from your perspective as a dean, what's been the most meaningful or unexpected lesson for you during these first 4 months of TMU medicine being real with the students finally in the seats?
Well, actually, it's been 6 months
Oh, it's
because the
been six
residence
months?
started
Oh,
in
wow,
July,
time
right?
has flew by.
Well, no, the residents have been started since July. I started
Right,
the job
yeah,
in
yeah.
2023, but I mean, I think that the school itself launched with our PGME, so that's
PGME, yeah.
postgraduate medical education, which is the residency programs, and
Yeah.
so launching 16 residency programs in July, and then the MD program in September.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a big rush to balance both creating a new medical school while also running one. Right? And so I think the biggest lesson has been that you need to constantly flip between the current state, which is how to deliver the curriculum and
Mm-hmm.
to foster success in the curriculum, and the co like learning that you have to do alongside. So I think of it as co-curricular or extracurricular content.
Yeah.
And then I think you need to also be thinking about how can we ensure that we engage everyone in the formal learning in the structures, right? So sometimes I'll deliver an academic half day lecture, like I will. I think January 5th, I'm delivering an academic lecture to the family medicine residents.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll speak to the emergency medicine residents. Sometimes I'll be helping teach your class in the health system science class, right? So all of
Mm-hmm.
these things are activities that have the balance while I'm also thinking about what does the year two curriculum look like? What new cases do we have to build? What are the teacher's guides that we need to make?
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think when we all saw the launch of the PGME over the summer, that's when it got real for me because seeing like our residents are also going to be like sort of mentors to us as well, and seeing them take their first steps is it's very cool because you don't at one point you feel like, oh, there may be like a divide, like their residents, your students, and obviously like with experience and stuff, it makes sense. But recognizing that they're also experiencing the journey for the first time relieves a bit of the stress and anxiety as students because now you know that your mentors are also someone who's exploring the path with you. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing is that all the faculty are also exploring the path with you in their
yeah,
own way as well. So that's always really cool. And I think that sometimes what happens as the curriculum matures is that the faculty have been through the case before, they get a little bored. And it's not quite the same as when they experience it the first time. So I think you have the most authentic experiences. They're learning alongside you.
right, right. And we can see that actually, like when we're learning in the classes, like we can see like them getting excited about certain things and like I guess just seeing the engagement build up over time is something that I'm sure you guys are looking forward to for a long, long time. Yeah, so that's really cool. Um, and just having to zoom out now and talk about like maybe just the aspect of a future physician beyond medicine. Um, given like the things that are happening these days with AI, digital health, data-driven medicine becoming way more prominent now, what do you think is the uniquely human skill that doctors must truly master? Something that technology really can't replace.
Omar, that's a really good question. I think as we think through what the skills we need for the future, I think it's going to be about education. I think it's going to be about systems improvement. I think it's going to be about integrating clinical care into parts of technology that maybe traditionally haven't had physicians right there trying
Mm,
to advocate for change. And so, for instance, generative AI bots. We know from the literature that when you program a generative AI bot to be a counselor or an interface, it can be great. And that's great when you have physicians designing it or clinicians designing it, and they are meant for healthcare. Where I think that we need to be more integrated is in the everyday use. So, for instance, in your very popular OpenAI app like ChatGPT or
mm-hmm,
Google's Gemini, how do you put in the guardrails? How do we make sure that we offer our services to some of these big tech companies so that a chatbot who is interfacing with someone who has lots of red flags for depression or anxiety
mm-hmm,
might actually provide the right assistance rather than just leading in and being a helpful chatbot that gives you strategies on how to become more obsessive, more depressed, more
mm,
prone to hurt yourself in a
mm-hmm.
way that is not helpful to you, but is the prompt that someone has entered into the system, right? Like
Right.
this is a worry that I have is that some of these tools at scale may actually not do the thing that we want it to do. And so how do we
Mm-hmm.
integrate more into that? And so I think that as we see more classmates like you and your classmates have more facile understanding of these technologies, use them, be part of them, have some understanding of how these kind of technologies integrate into your work stream and how you might interact with them from day to day. Hopefully, we can have more physicians engaged in some of these technology development and be part of the system that changes and evolves and makes it safer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I think that's really important to distinguish, especially as students, because being medical students, we look at the technology and we're always kind of prone to thinking more about how are we going to use it in our jobs in healthcare, but we tend to forget that this is something that's accessible to like the whole world right now, like like ChatGPT and these other like models. And as a physician, you're not only serving people who come to the hospital, people who come to you in the clinic. It's about like the whole world and like what they have access to. Is there something you can do to kind of step in and ensure that that is also reliable, that's also credible, so that way there's no like casualties that are unintended. And yeah, you're definitely right, Dr. Chan, about like how there's a lot of people in our class who are good at some of these things. They pick it out more than others, and I think there's so much opportunity for students like us to, in the future, work with these companies and kind of figure out how we as physicians can influence the making of better models, or even just refine the ones that we currently have. Yeah, I think that's a really great touch to it. Um, and of course, when we're talking about shaping future physicians, it doesn't only happen with technology and like what's happens in the classroom. A lot of it happens through leadership as well, often behind the scenes. So I want to talk a bit about your role as well. Being a dean is often seen as somewhat of an administrative role. So how do you personally stay creative and energized in a position that oftentimes carries so much responsibility?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that creativity is something that is hard to maintain unless you keep thinking across different fields. And so, a big part of how I think through different problems is that I pay attention to how things are done in other places, right? And so,
Mm,
creativity is both intake of a broad spectrum of information and then finding linkages between. That's the way I think about creativity. It's not always thinking about something new completely. It's about building on by what's come before, but but what comes before might be coming from a field in English, or it might be coming from industry. And so I think that a
mm-hmm.
big part of how you stay creative, honestly, Omar, is you have to actually read broadly, sense make, take some time to learn, continue to experience the world, understand what's out there, and try to make those connections. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to say it. And I remember like even during the one of our classes, I think it was health system sciences, you were there and you were telling us about like a creative solution during residency, like the board. I think that was what you were alluding to, like having residents kind of write on a board or something like that, like something very simple but could be taught about in a broad scale, and building on things that are done before. I think that is some when we think about creativity, it's like often like it's brand new. It has to be something new. That's also what I've been taught of with in the past too. But thinking about like what's out there and how to build from there, I think that's the smarter way to go at times too. But I tend to find it difficult sometimes to even think about that. Do you have any advice for like students like me who um, are so used to like trying to create something new but struggle to explore? Like,
Well, it's not easy. If it was
yeah,
easy, everyone would do it, right? And so
yeah,
this is the challenge, is that you have to learn so much before you can really bring things together in a complex field. In
yeah.
a very simple field, like in, not to say math is simple, but math has very regimented rules, right? I was listening to, I think it was Adam Grant's podcast, where he was talking about how in fields where the rules are very defined, like in chess, in math, um, people's creativity peaks earlier. Like the big leaps in math
Mm,
come earlier in training, and that's because, not to say that it's not super chaotic in math once you get into the higher maths,
yeah.
but the rules are not actually varying that much. And so people who do theoretical physics and mathematics and chess, um, each of those fields, like theoretical physics, usually people peak in their 30s and 40s, math maybe in their 20s and 30s, and chess, because it's even simpler than all of those, people are peaking in their teens, right? Rubik's
Mm-hmm.
Cube, for instance, right? Like when you're doing stuff really fast, um, the younger you are, the more you might rethink the way that you might do something, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
the creativity comes from when you know the rules enough to break them, right?
Right.
Art would be another one where, depending
Mm-hmm.
on the kind of art, and now that there's more art out there and more traditions, Well, it's harder to break the rules now until you learn all of them.
Mm.
And so in healthcare, it's a very complex field. And so people often don't peak until they've learned all the rules. And so right now, Omar, you're still in a phase where you're learning the rules.
Yeah.
Even as residents, you're still learning the rules because you got to learn the rules of your specialty. And then after you've done all of that training, that's when you'll be probably the most creative is during your staff period, where
Mm.
you understand the rules at play, you understand the system. But we need to give you that gift of boosting you to understand the system so that you learn the rules. And that's why we've got courses like health system science in your curriculum, because we actually think those are the operating rules. If we can give you the gift of understanding how healthcare is funded now, so that you don't have to learn that by accident later on. Well, that can give you more creativity in that
Mm-hmm.
early career phase where you will then understand all the rules, not have to have read too many books or talked to too many people and sought mentorship that's unofficial in order to
Yeah.
understand how things work. And then you can break those rules judiciously, like Picasso did, right?
Mm.
And so the idea would be that you need to study the discipline. Picasso had lots of boring drawings that were just about learning how to be an artist. And then he broke all the rules, right?
Yeah.
And so the same thing here, you need to understand all the rules and the operating systems, and then you can break them. It would have been easier to be Bill Gates and be creative in the,
Yeah.
80s, essentially, right?
Yeah.
You can create a very innovative company called Microsoft back when he did, and that would be very different. And coding Windows then was very different than if you wanted to create a new operating system now. You got to learn like a bazillion different coding schemas and understand all of them
Mm.
in order to break the rules, right? And
Right.
there are tools like Gen AI that can help you code. But if you don't know the basics, you can't debug the code when the AI doesn't program exactly what you want. And so
Yeah.
there's something about understanding your discipline really well so that you can fix the problems, right? And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I have friends who are like, "Oh, you don't need to learn how to code anymore. You have Gen AI." I'm like, "Yeah, but what if it breaks? Like you can't understand the coding language. You can't pull back the
Yeah.
curtain." And that's like the difference between someone who can, use an app to make a podcast versus someone who can actually go back to the code and debug a program. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's the era that we're entering in. Similarly, in healthcare, is that we need to give our young people in the system more information so that they can understand the system and then they can be creative because Gen AI is not going to be able to take that away. Gen AI reiterates what's been said before
Mm.
in different good combinations.
Right.
And so it's like the most wise person that's, not got any new ideas. The new ideas have to come from people who understand all the rules, understand what people have said before, and then build upon it to build something as a new framework and a new thing. And I think that's where creativity for the next generation has to come from. But we have to, as educators, give you that access to mentors, wisdom, for you to
Mm-hmm.
hear stories from CEOs and health system leaders, so that you can understand what it means
Mm-hmm.
to be a leader in today's healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I think, yeah, definitely resources from our teachers, but also from a student's perspective, having just an open mind and appreciating
Yeah,
like patience with the process, right? Yeah.
from the student's point of view, I think it's paying attention.
Yeah.
It's picking things up when you start going into your clinical experiences with PCLE in the next term, right? You're
Yeah.
going to be going into, so PCLE, for those who are listening, is what we call our primary care longitudinal experience, where our students are going to go into the clinical space on Tuesdays for a full day every other week or so.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they'll be going to experience things that are um, like a clinic day. It could be that they'll be doing something outpatient experience wise, experiencing different kinds of healthcare and understanding, that maybe going to hang out with a physiotherapist, see what they're doing. It might be going out to see a specialist and what's going on there. And so the idea would be that we want you to understand and see how the system works, but we're also not sending you just to observe in a passive way, but you need to be active, right? For you to
Mm-hmm.
understand, oh, why is that person pulling out their insurance card? Why is that important? Oh, someone has to pay out of pocket if they go to this kind of clinical
Mm-hmm.
experience and they don't have insurance, then they have to pay for it with their credit card.
Yeah.
Oh, even those who have to, you know, have they get reimbursed, but they get a reimbursement of a check later. Being
Mm,
understand what that means, right? Being able to pay up front and then get a check in the mail, well, that's a very different experience as well, right? And so that's where I think we need to work with you to understand, okay, what is the system that's at play here, and how do you then think about how you would integrate all of that in, and what does that mean if someone is having trouble accessing funds? What if they don't have a credit card? How does
mm,
that change the game? And I think that that's the mindset that we want you to go in with, and we want you to experience things differently. And then in
mm,
your clinical rotations, it's for you to like experience different clinical rotations, knowing that every 2 to 4 weeks you're going to be doing something completely different. And as a consequence, when you do those different things, you'll experience life in a
mm,
very different lens, and you might see some experiences from one rotation that make a lot of sense, and that you can port over to another experience and improve the clinical care somewhere else.
mm.
So, I think I told you the story. When I was a third year resident, I went from one rotation to the next.
Yeah,
And at one rotation, they have a very organized system where every day the residents would write their location. Some of us were the OR, some of us were on call, some of us were, in clinic off site. We'd write it all down. The nurses then would know, okay, let's call this person because they're on call. Um, and then on another rotation, they were just randomly phoning every resident in alphabetical order because they never knew where people were and who was on call. I was like, oh, why don't we just every morning write down where we're going to be, like that other rotation? And
yeah.
everyone thought I was a genius, and I was like, no, I just stole this from the the last rotation. And now they've actually made it a permanent systems
Yeah,
change. And when I visit that floor, they still have that location board, but now it's like laminated on the whiteboard
it's
rather
fancy.
than
Yeah.
like it's all fancy now, as opposed to being something that's transient and a test pilot, right? And so
Yeah.
it's not a big systems change, but it saves the
Mm,
nurses on that ward so much time, probably hours of their lives now, because now they know who the right
mm,
person to call is. And I think that makes a huge difference. And so little changes like that all along the way, if you can be paying attention and just watching the world go by and really thinking through, how can I change the system to be a little bit better? I think that's what we want to give you the gift of, and for you
mm,
to see the connections. And that's where, when we talk about creativity, and where that's where creativity comes, is when you
mm.
have enough experience to make that suggestion, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. I think that's what we're looking forward to now is on top of all the learning that we're doing is actually seeing things and then being in the position to make those connections and have those light bulb moments because we come with so many lived experience. Like our class is so diverse and unique in that sense, and I think a lot of us will resonate to different parts of the system in different ways. So when some of us experience like something like in a clinic and seeing like someone have to pay out of pocket versus someone being in the ER and then noticing like the wait times. I think it's just gonna be like we're gonna have those moments where we'll connect, but we'll also be in a position to be like, let's think about this differently now and see how we could contribute as people growing in the field. And yeah, it's really exciting. It's really exciting to be in that position. I see that we're coming close to the end of the episode time, so I'm just gonna go to like our final reflection question for you, Dr. Chan. When you think about this inaugural cohort and the future classes after us, what gives you the most hope about the next generation of physicians?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think the hope that I see is your energy and your excitement to make change. I
Mm,
think that right now, probably because of COVID, in the system itself, there's a lot of resistance or a re-emerging resistance to change. During COVID, everyone was like, let's change everything.
yeah,
And we were good at it.
there's
And
talk.
then now that we're on the other side of COVID, I think there's a little bit of emerging resistance. We're like, oh, we changed so much. It's called change fatigue when that happens, right? And I
Change.
think that what we need a constant boost of people who have that spark and have that excitement to change, but maybe have the tools to change as well. Because I
Mm,
think that as a young person, sometimes what happens is, and I experienced this myself when I was first new as faculty, you feel very disempowered. Even though you have all the creativity and you have the ideas,
Yeah.
you don't always have the power. You don't always have the experience. And then people are like, well, and I think that that's where giving you access to think through how you actually position yourself with allies, with stakeholders, with people who work alongside you, mentors, sponsors, to be able to make the change that you want and understand how to make change within a system rather than simply advocating from outside. I think that one of the biggest transitions you can make is being someone who is an advocate from the outside, right? So for all the people who listen to your podcast, they want to advocate for change in science and healthcare. Picket lines and making political points that way can give you a little bit of buzz in the media, but doesn't usually make persistent change. And the harder thing is to get to the right tables where you can sit at the sufficient number of boring meetings that you can understand what the change management process looks like and how many people you actually need to talk to make the change that you want. And once you understand that, then you have to do this perspective where you are impatient for change, but you are patient in making the change. I call it impatiently patient. We've talked about it in class before, right? Like you have to have that fire in your belly. You got to keep that flame going. But then you also need to understand that sometimes you can't burn everything down, because if you burn everything down, you won't have anything left to build. And so that tension between being hungry to change things and yet with the wisdom and experience and understanding of theories and frameworks about change to meter that and dole it out slowly, right? Because a fire that burns uncontrolled will consume everything and burn everything down. But the same fire inside a furnace with the right ventilation can warm a family for a long time, right? True. And so and the same amount of fuel, one burns very brightly and you can see it from a mile away, and there's firefighters that call 911, comes and puts out the fire. That kind of passion, if it was more controlled, ends up being the same amount of fuel that you might need to persistently do good with it, right? And so I think a fire is an example of an analogy, but I think that sometimes passion is the same way. I think sometimes when you're new to a system and you can see all the great ideas, what you don't know is that have they tried it before? And yes, you're right, us old farts will say, oh, we tried that before, it's not going to work. Complexity theory would suggest that maybe you can try again and the conditions and the people are different, and so now it'll be different, right? And we see that with composting. They tried it many decades ago, it didn't work, but now people are really excited about composting, really passionate about it, and now everyone has a green bin, right? And so just because it's been done before doesn't mean you can never try it again. That's not true either. But at the same time, you can't kind of shame everyone into doing something, especially when they're well, that's what we think too. How are we going to change this?
No,
hope that makes sense.
That
so
makes
sense. I'm really passionate to see people who understand the system and build systems, and so I think that's why your class is very exciting as a bunch of future leaders, because you understand the act of co-creation. You now have started all these clubs, and the things that you start up now, learning how to start those things up actually gives you the abilities to later start something out in healthcare, start something up outside of healthcare, maybe as an entrepreneur, maybe start up a research lab, right? The same kind of things that you're doing now, starting up a club, it's a transferable skill. It's a change, it's a startup, it's your ability to do that, right? And when your startup goes wrong and you're like, oh, I'd rather you fail fast, learn from it, and then start a new club, right? So you're like, oh, well, maybe not all the creative arts could have been in one club because they don't have the same needs. And you're like, okay, maybe we need separate for art and music, and that's an example, right? Not to say that you all have done that. I don't actually know what you're doing in terms of all your clubs. There's so many of them, I can't keep
too
up.
many as well.
like for instance, I think athletics, right? Like there was a
Yeah.
thought that maybe there was a volleyball team and a running club, but then I think it's been amalgamated now. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's an example of a change, right? Because people
Yeah.
had ideas, but then you're like, okay, we're willing to change. Let's put this together, and maybe that club will be successful. Maybe in the end they'll be like, yeah, this doesn't work, and then you have to learn how to change it.
Mm.
But learning how to change in any circumstance and lead a bunch of people through that change is, I think, the part that you can learn now and learn the skill in the setting that you're in the context you're in, but understand the principles and the theory and be able to digest, okay, what did I do there that was successful? Take that principle forward and do it again. And then
Mm.
do it again. And then they would do it again, right? Because it might
Mm-hmm.
be that you lead your bunch of, let's say you become an internist, the internal medicine residents, you become chief resident, you want to change the curriculum a little bit. Great.
Mm.
Yeah. So, and then you get all the flack because none of the residents like it. Well, then how are you going to lead that change? How are you going to
Mm.
message to them? How are you going to build for the resistance to change ahead of time? How do you phase it in with the
Mm.
newbies? Maybe you bring the the seasoned PGY4s in to talk about why they didn't like the previous system, so that the first years understand why you're using case-based learning instead of lectures, right? Et cetera, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of thing that allows you to learn the craft of leadership and change before you necessarily will make that change in the healthcare system, but it gets your reps in and gets your muscle memory and your brain around a change process.
Mm.
And that's why I think it's really exciting to watch all of you build this medical school from your vantage point, because the skills you're learning right now, and that's probably the case with every medical student, is that
Mm.
the skills you learn in your medical school outside of the formal curriculum can be as powerful experiences as the ones you learn from the inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a lot for me and the listeners, and also probably the class to reflect on as well. I think it's a fresh perspective to start with in the new year as well, to see it that way and understand that, these skills are transferable. I really liked your analogy of the fire and also the muscle memory aspect of it, that these things can come back to us later on. Yeah, definitely a more grounding way to end this episode. And with that, we're going to conclude. Dr. Chan, thank you so much for your time, your honesty, and for the work you're doing to shape the future of our curriculum and medical education in Canada. As a student, it means a lot to hear these reflections, and I know they'll resonate deeply with our listeners as well. And for everyone tuning in, thank you for listening to the Advocai Health Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, share it with a friend, or continue the conversation. And until next time, stay curious and keep advocating for what you're passionate for. Thank you, everyone.